Hi, everybody, and welcome to the CRMBA program. My name is Jenny, and I'm the Career and Resilience Coach for the program, and you're going to be seeing a lot of me over the next 2 years. And if COVID wasn't happening, we'd be meeting in person. I'd have cookies and muffins and coffee and tea for you this morning, and we'd be meeting in this building. So I hope you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with you today, and we're going to review a couple of slides on resumes. One of the main reasons for the session today, our main goal, is to have your resume ready to go to be included in the portfolio of candidates. It's a book we put together every year and we send out to about 600 employers showing your resume and what you're capable of. So today is that's the kind of goal. And how we're going to do that is I'm going to go over a few of the resume timelines and things that we have in place to support you to get your resume to the next level. I'm going to go over a little bit about the employer's perspective. All these years that I've been working with employers, I'm going to share with you some of the things that they really like. We're also going to talk a little bit about visual and formatting tips that you can do to improve your resume, and content and structure of the resume to make sure that you're including the most relevant things to your resume. I'm also going to talk a little bit about sections that you can include and all kinds of choices in that area. I'm going to talk a little bit about action and accomplishment statements that really get employers' attention. And I'm going to show you a few before and after resumes from students from last year. I'm going to take off my video now so you can have full access to the PowerPoint. And you can have any questions, you can always email me. So here are a few things that we have in place for you during July to help you, to support you to get your resume to the next level. From the 5th to the 14th, you can have a resume review with our assistant career and recruitment specialists. They are students who are trained in resume development, and the expectations of employers. So that's where you're going to start. Have a quick session with them. They'll review your resume and give you some feedback. On the 15th, if you want, there's going to be a drop-in resume booster session. And Ali and myself will be there, and we're also going to pull in some other career and recruitment specialists from MCS to go over your resumes and give you feedback. Then, on the 18th of July, which is a Sunday, you're going to submit your resume into Brightspace under Module 1. And then all of that week, you'll be hearing from Ali or myself if your resume needs a little bit more tweaking. And then the final is due on the 26th. And this resume will then go into the portfolio. I first want to start by putting yourself in the employer's shoes. The employers, when they put out an application, they typically have hundreds of applications sometimes to go through. And when they're going through those applications, they're doing an assessment. And they're basing that assessment on the job description. So this essentially becomes their checklist. They're going to be looking for a match between what you can do and what problems or challenges they need solved. Recruiting is risky business. It costs companies lots of money. And that's the whole reason they go through this assessment process. So we need to make sure that we are giving them the right information and enough information to allow them to see that hiring you or having you in for an interview is not a risky endeavor. You have what they need. When employers are going through your applications, they're asking a few questions. What can you do for me? Do you have the skills I need? Where did you demonstrate these skills? What did you do? How did you accomplish what you did? And did it work? Which essentially answers the question, are you effective? We're dealing with limited attention span, and applications may get 10 to 30 seconds for the first viewing. So we want to make sure that you're answering these questions so that you get on to the next stage. So in this process, your job is to help make the match. You want to be able to clearly articulate the experiences and the skills that you have for what the employer is looking for. The very first thing to do is go through the job description and highlight skills that you know that you have. The next stage is then to identify where you might have done some of these skills. I want you to notice here that a lot of these experiences here aren't direct experience, but they're transferable skills. Those are all relevant. And this gives you kind of a T-bar and a checklist of things that you want to make sure that you include. Also really helpful for the interview. The very first impression of a resume is your visual and formatting. It can create a very powerful first impression. A couple of things that you want to be conscious of from the visual and formatting perspective of your resume is A, make sure there's enough white space. This is a readable document. Their eyes need to navigate easily throughout the resume. That includes consistent formatting, making sure that all your sections are formatted the same. Make sure that your margins aren't too narrow so that it's not distracting and not making the resume look a little bit off. You also want to make sure to justify your dates. Have the dates along the right column, and that way when the eye goes down the left-hand side of your resume, they're going to pull out the important details like your education and what you did and some powerful action verbs. To make it really readable, make sure that you go have bullets instead of paragraphs. And that way it allows the first word from that statement to stand out, and it's easy on the eye to navigate. It's also really important that we're also dealing with attention span, and we want to make sure that we don't go over 2 pages. And this is even more unique if you're going into finance, because finance resumes require a 1-page resume. And I have lots of resources on that for you too, if finance is an area. So structure and content are also really important for a resume. This is where the meat is going to be of your skills and making that match to employers. One thing you want to make sure, here are a couple of tricks. You want easy to read sections. You can tell from this resume, I can tell the sections quite easily just from having a brief look at it. You also want to make sure what you did comes over where you did it. So your position comes over your employer, your education and your degree comes before where you did it. Also to align your dates, and that gives more weight for the experience and what you did to really stand out. Another part is really action statements are so critical, and we're going to go over a few action statement formulas and samples towards the end of this video. Your action statements need to be informative and impactful, and they need to be succinct. We don't want to have a lot of extra words, extra pronouns that just create more white noise. You also want to include only what is relevant. Your resume is not a biography. As much as we would love to tell them everything you did, it's only going to create white noise and it's going to distract from your main message. So only include what is relevant. There's all kinds of sections to include on a resume. These are just a sampling of things that other students have done or other people have put on their resume. Maybe you've attended conferences that you want to make sure that you allow the employer to see that you are a lifelong learner. Maybe there is technical skills associated with your position. Maybe you've used analytical software before and you may need to have a technical section. Maybe the position requires that you have exceptional initiative, and maybe you've participated in many varsity athletics. That's what you can include. All kinds of things, all kinds of different sections. So for the main point of this presentation, we're going to be going over really the areas that get the employer's attention and are really easy to adapt and to make relevant for each position. We're going to go over the profile and give you tips and tricks. We're going to go over action statements that you can include in your resume. So this summary section, summary of qualifications, profile summary, is listed at the very top of your resume and can be extremely impactful for encouraging the reader to read on. Essentially, you're answering the question, what are the 3 to 5 things the employer needs to understand about you? So essentially you are addressing the question, so what? A summary of qualifications can really be links to other experiences. It can highlight values. It can highlight community experience that you've had that won't be relevant to the position. One thing I want you to notice here is that some of these qualifications, the students have done a really great job of making sure the transferable skills between their previous experience and what the employer needs is relevant. So, for example, this person talked about their strong analytical skills in relation to their Master's of Science degree. If the employer has never had a master's degree in science or taken science courses, they may not understand how much analytical skills you are already doing. This particular student was applying to a fintech company, and she wanted to make sure that the employer knew that she was very aware and have engaged with this local startup culture, which was what the company was engaged in. A lot of the times, your summary of qualifications or highlights can make links to multiple different experiences so that it can stand out. For example, leadership qualities. This particular person has been doing it in multiple different facets. So she made that direct link at the very top of her resume so they understand that. This particular position was also community-based, and the employer wanted to see what she has done in order to connect with the community and so forth. One section that you're going to be able to incorporate in your resume, if you don't have now, is your academic experience and projects. You are going to be developing so many skills and experiences from your classwork, from your group projects, and we want to make sure that that is on your resume to highlight to employers. And I've just given you a few examples of how students have done that. Notice that they've created action statements attached to the work they've done so the employer really understands kind of what they've been involved in. So as a career shifter, now that you're entering the MBA, you're probably shifting what you were doing in the past to a new career. So one of the things that you can do is to ensure that the experience that you include the relevant parts of that experience. So for example, if you've done in the service industry and you're applying for a job in client-facing role, they're going to want to see what you did in that bartending and serving experience. You're not going to be including everything you did in that position, only what is relevant to the employer. This particular student here talked about their experience in sciences and geology to talk about how they do their assessment, how they do their software that can help with analytics. These are all really relevant. The other way you can format relevant experience is really including a relevant experience and an other experience. So you'll notice in the relevant experience, they've included the title and where it was and some action statements. And in the other one, they've just included what they did and no action statements, because they may refer to that experience as a server or a research coordinator in their professional profile or in their interview, but they want to make sure that it's not totally eliminated from their resume and that it is there, but they're not going to waste the space with action items. They're going to use that space for the skills and the experiences that are more directly related. Just some tips. So before we move into really powerful action statements, I want to stop for a second and talk about results and accomplishments. They are extremely powerful in getting the employer's attention, allowing the employer to understand what you did, but if it worked, employers want to see that you were effective in any realm that you were in. So when we go to do our action statements, we need to be conscious of things that worked to prove to employers that we are effective. So did you get good feedback? Did you, whatever the project that you were working on and the intent of that goal, did it work? Did you deliver a really effective group presentation? How did you know it was effective? Did you meet an expected goal or target? Did you go above and beyond what was asked? These are things to start to think about when we're putting together our results and accomplishments. You can probably write a whole page on all the things that you did in a position. And what this stage is now, you're going to be pulling only what is relevant from that position. And that the action statements that you will include will be powerful and succinct because you're not going to be giving every detail. I want you to first notice here in this particular action statements all of the really strong starting verbs and words that they started their sentences with. If I read nothing else but effectively, managed, contributed, and developed, I know that you've made some progress in your career. And there's enough detail to allow the employer to see what you did. And if it worked, quantify whenever possible. And we'll be going over tips and tricks for really powerful action statements. So the good news is that action statements, there's actually a formula that can help you to put some of your action statements together. You start by just collecting an action verb. What is the skill that you're going to talk about in that statement? A trick here is to go to the job ad and highlight every action verb. And those are things that you can start your statements with. They also really help if the employer is putting your resume through a software system scanning for relevant information. This will ensure you get more hits. The next stage is really the details of the statement. How did you do the job that you were doing? If you had to analyze lots of information, how did you start by analyzing it? What were the stages that you did to make sure that happens? Or why were you doing it so the employer understands what the task was for and why. And the most important thing was the result. You're not going to have a result for every single action statement, but I want you to be conscious of including a result when it's relevant. So here's a sample. This is a before statement. Successfully marketed the student newspaper. The after statement is marketed student newspaper by increasing marketing budget, facilitating focus groups, and adapting branding based on student feedback. Resulted in expanded reader subscription by 20%. I just want you to notice the difference in those statements. Excuse me. I know that this one is longer, but you're going to have less statements on your resume, only what's relevant and impactful. So essentially with this one, we included an action verb, marketed. We gave them details of how you did it, and we quantified. And we showed the result. Very powerful. Here's another action statement tip. The before statement is provided effective customer service to call center customers. But the problem here is that we don't know what effective is. There's not much detail. So the after would be provided effective service to 40 to 60 customers per day in a fast-paced call center, receiving average satisfaction rating of 4.5 out of 5. So we've reduced repetition in the first line, we've quantified to give perspective, and we've shown the results to show that what you did worked. Here's another example. The before statement, responsible for fundraising event for ABC charity, which resulted in us raising a lot of funds. The after, organized a community sport event for ABC charity, including ticket sales, Facebook promotion, and on-site coordination, resulting in over 5,000 in donations raised. Much more of an impactful statement. So things that we've done here is we removed the responsible for. Responsible for just outlines what the job responsibilities were. It doesn't outline how you did it. We eliminated pronouns and gave specifics of what you did. And we quantified the results. Very powerful. So here is an example of a resume that was submitted from the before perspective. A couple of things I want you to notice here. His experience is hidden underneath where he did it. Stuff like in their action statements, he could have been more succinct and used better action verbs, and little things like eliminating information that's duplicate. This information is already known above, and he could have used this space to really talk about what he did. We eliminated the pronouns to make use and make space for more stronger action verbs that are oriented towards the position. The other thing is that he had lots of experience here in working with a team and working with people. Even if it was from a lacrosse perspective, that is skills that he's been using and need to be highlighted if he's going to be applying to positions that are client-centered. And here is the after. A couple of things I want you to notice. A, this student included a profile, and he was able to explain the so what between his experiences in science and what he will be doing in the work terms. He also updated his action statements, started them with powerful action verbs and talked about what was relevant to the position. You also notice now that his position stands out over what he did. The resume is easy to read and it's really easy on the eye to navigate. This student also expanded on some of his volunteer experience and talked a little bit about the skills that will be relevant to the position he's hiring. So some of these things seem very minor, but in regards to a first impression and the effectiveness of a resume and whether or not the employer wants to read on is really crucial in the details. I will be attaching some before and after samples as a document with this PowerPoint, and you can go over them, go through them, see the differences, see what works for you, see what things that you may find would be effective for your resume. All right, here are the next steps. Review all the resume workshop materials and guidelines on Brightspace in Module 1. Schedule an appointment with an assistant career and recruitment specialist from July 5th to the 14th through My Career. Attend a drop-in resume booster session if you need on the 15th of July to get your resume reviewed by their CRSs. And then on Sunday, July 18th, you upload your resume. That week you might hear from us if you need any feedback. And the final thing is due on the 26th, the resume. Thank you very much for participating and watching. If you have any questions, always reach out.